This narrative details Parker's altered perspective following the dissolution of his marriage to Bonnie. As he navigates the complexities of divorce and parenting, he experiences a complex emotional state, oscillating between feelings of relief and anxiety. He finds solace in the company of new acquaintances and the prospect of romantic relationships. Ultimately, Parker recognizes that in his pursuit of a new life and new relationships, he can not only find healing but also a fresh start. Have you ever been suspected of a serious crime, a crime that you did not commit? It is worth noting that I attempted to avoid identifying potential issues. I maintained a calm and inconspicuous demeanor, yet, fortuitously, all the problems materialized simultaneously, necessitating my intervention. I am Parker, and my wife Bonnie and I have been together for 5 eventful years. We met the week before Christmas during my senior year of high school. At that time, my primary objective was to have as many romantic encounters as possible. Bonnie presented a significant challenge, one I was unable to overcome. Reflecting on this experience, I recognized the value of perseverance and resilience in the face of adversity. I had previously accepted defeat, however, and now wished that I had persisted in my attempts to win her over throughout the remainder of my senior year. Despite my desire to begin playing my instrument as soon as possible, graduation marked the beginning of my downfall. Consequently, after a night out together, we discovered that she was pregnant. 2 months later, this made us consider the available options for honeymoon destinations suitable for expectant mothers. My hopes of going to my enrollment at the university has been postponed indefinitely. I have always been fascinated by computer programming and have taken several college-level courses during my later years in high school. I possess a strong command of SQL and can easily construct queries, views, functions, and stored procedures. I am also skilled in crafting triggers for complex data scenarios. I have significantly advanced my proficiency by utilizing available tools and resources on the internet. I can work from virtually anywhere with Wi-Fi. In my case, this means that I am unable to leave my residence. However, my current situation is somewhat complicated due to an altercation in a nightclub where I resorted to physical violence. Despite not being a physically imposing individual, I find myself under house arrest for the next 10 months. This incident marked the first altercation I have had since grade school. It was more of an ambush than a fair fight. Fortunately, felony charges were avoided. Following the birth of our son, Adam, a period of relative tranquility ensued. I was gainfully employed in a programming position offering a competitive salary, situated within an office environment alongside approximately a dozen other programmers. Despite our relative youth and inexperience, Bonnie and I engaged in sexual intercourse. She asserts that she was taking birth control medication, yet we are now attending a medical appointment. Upon examining the sonogram, we observed 3 sets of tiny hands and feet. The birth of our first child, Bon, proceeded smoothly. He was followed shortly by Connie, and finally, Danny completed our family. I am currently contemplating undergoing sterilization before we expand our family further. Dealing with a toddler who exhibits challenging behaviors and feels neglected compared to his whining sisters can be exhausting. On a Saturday night, on the evening in question, Bonnie's parents provided childcare services for Bonnie, while I enjoyed a meal at a franchise restaurant. Following this, I discovered a nightclub with a live band. This was our inaugural visit to a bar since reaching the age of 21. The establishment was populated by a considerable number of individuals, which made it challenging to engage in conversation and dancing. Consequently, we chose to visit a different nightclub that lacked a live band but was equipped with a jukebox and a dance floor. This venue was populated by approximately 40 individuals who were enjoying themselves. After a few dances, after consuming a few drinks, we found ourselves seated near 3 other couples, all of whom were strangers to us. The men engaged in conversation about sports, while the women discussed an unidentified topic. Some other men approached our table and invited the ladies to dance. 2 of the women accepted, while 2 declined. I observed Bonnie joining a man on the dance floor after a couple of lively dances. She returned later, and a different man asked her to dance. She glanced at me, and I signaled my approval with a nod. The couple danced together for several songs, and it appeared that there was no inappropriate behavior on the dance floor. I excused myself to visit the restroom, and upon my return, Bonnie was nowhere to be found. Despite my efforts to search, I was unable to locate her. I stepped outside and observed a man with his right hand positioned between Bonnie's legs, outside her jeans, vigorously touching her. It appeared that she was reciprocating his advances with her hands around his neck while his left hand ventured under her blouse. Their faces were in close proximity without hesitation. I intervened by delivering a forceful kick to the side of his leg just below the knee, causing him to cry out in pain. I then forcefully pressed his blonde locks against the concrete block building, causing him to collapse. Subsequent kicks thwarted any further misconduct on his part. Subsequent to this, he engaged in further misconduct. It appeared that my final kick had a significant impact, possibly affecting his reproductive organs. Security personnel intervened shortly thereafter. I then turned to Bonnie and demanded an explanation. Her response was incoherent, leaving me perplexed as to how she managed to return home. This remains a mystery to me. Throughout the night, I considered the possibility that intoxication may have led to such inappropriate behavior. Our group subsequently found ourselves after my parents posted bail for me and brought me home. Bonnie repeatedly apologized. However, I eventually confronted her, stating that apologies do not clarify the motives behind one's actions. When you are ready to explain, I will be all ears, but until then, please refrain from speaking. Despite my request, no explanation was ever provided. There was a decline in sexual intimacy as a result of the tension in the household. Despite the financial constraints that limited us to a novice lawyer, Bonnie made efforts to avoid conflicts. I doubted that hiring a top-tier attorney would have yielded better results. Instead, I received a sentence of 11 months under house arrest, which confined me to my home except for medical emergencies or transportation by ambulance or police car. My constant presence became overwhelming for Bonnie. She began socializing with neighbors over coffee to cope. However, I found solace in spending time with my family. Fortunately, my boss accommodated my situation, allowing me to participate in online meetings to stay updated on project requirements and progress. The next blow to our marriage came less than a month into my confinement. "Parker, I'll be direct," Bonnie said, "I can't bear sitting idle every night while you're." Since the incident in which I was groped, I have been reconsidering my choices. I met someone at the supermarket, and I am going out on a date with him on Friday night. I had intended to remain composed and speak sensibly, but my reaction was quite different. My wife, Bunny, reacted with fear and sought refuge in our bedroom and secured the door. I explicitly conveyed that our marriage would be terminated if she persisted in her actions. I promptly contacted both sets of parents, who agreed to come over. My parents, Julie and Mark, share striking similarities. Julie and Edith both embody a nurturing persona, while Julie occasionally opts for trousers and Edith exclusively wears floor-length dresses, which conceal any potential extra appendages. My father, Mark, and Roger bear resemblance to each other as well, both sporting fashionable attire. Despite Edith's attempts to persuade Bonnie to divulge the source of her distress, I proceeded to recount my understanding of the situation to the assembled group. As the evening progressed, the atmosphere became increasingly tense, culminating in Bonnie's abrupt termination of the gathering with a chilling ultimatum: "If you ever wish to see your grandchildren again, you will refrain from interfering in my personal affairs." Our parents' expressions of sympathy were as the others bade their farewells with comforting hugs. Bonnie retreated once more to the bedroom, locking the door behind her. This left me to spend another night on the couch. Bonnie was hardly home for the remainder of the week, and I was clueless about her whereabouts. I found myself responsible for two mouths to feed and attend to, Mark and myself. I arranged for a visit from a divorce lawyer, which left me I was confronted with a dilemma. Unless Bonnie was deemed unfit to fulfill the role of mother, I would be responsible for nearly 18 years of child support, along with expenses for spousal support, housing, and other obligations. On Friday evening, just past 6, Bonnie made a remark that was disrespectful and uncooperative. I pleaded with Bonnie to reconsider her decision, but she ultimately chose to leave, effectively ending our marriage. The time was 12 a.m. My telephone rang, but I was unable to identify the number, so I allowed the call to be redirected to my voicemail inbox upon hearing the message tone. I then elected to listen to the message. "This is Abby from University Hospital. This is to inform Mr. DeBlas that his wife, Bonnie, has been admitted for treatment. While she is not currently in danger, she will require surgery tomorrow. I am contacting you to inform you that my number is part of I experienced a sense of justice, yet I was unable to leave the house. I was uncertain as to whether he had harmed her, whether she had been involved in a car accident, and whether he had been driving. I was unable to sleep, as I contemplated these questions. The hungry cries of the 3 children only served to further exhaust me, and I was drained by the time the roosters announced dawn at 8 a.m. The doorbell interrupted my train of thought as I approached the front door. I observed a sleek sedan parked behind my vehicle. The man at the door displayed his badge and inquired, "Is Parker Douglas here?" "That would be me." "How can I be of assistance, Detective John?" "Yes, call me John." "Are you aware that your wife is in the hospital?" "I am inquiring as to whether you have any information regarding the whereabouts of Parker Douglas." "I am currently at the hospital, and I am unsure as to your whereabouts at approximately midnight last night." "Had you checked, you would have already been aware of the situation." "I am wearing an ankle monitor, which I have been instructed to wear for my own safety. I apologize for not checking on the situation sooner." "Do you know of anyone who might wish harm upon your wife?" "I do not believe so, but I cannot think of anyone immediately. The hospital left a message regarding her being there. That is all I know." "What happened?" "I must say, Parker, your demeanor is rather perplexing." "Care to elaborate?" "She decided to end our marriage last night and went on a date. I somewhat hope her companion assaulted her severely." His expression turned grave. "Nothing of that sort, at least not as far as I know. As she was leaving a motel room, she was physically attacked. There is no indication of sexual assault from her. The face is badly bruised, but the most severe damage is to her left hand. Each finger was broken with a hammer. They left a message on her face with a black marker." Despite the grim news, I found myself smiling. I had no involvement whatsoever in this. "I am unable to assist you, John. If you'll excuse me, I hear children who need feeding again." I considered informing Bonnie's parents of the situation, but ultimately decided that Bonnie should handle the conversation herself. The day was filled with the usual demands of childcare, including feeding, bathing, and diaper changes. I had only a few minutes to spare for television and my programming projects were piling up, indicating another late night of coding ahead. Just past 4 p.m. My telephone rang, displaying Bonnie's name on the caller ID. I elected to allow the call to go to voicemail. "Parker, I am unsure if you are aware, but I was the victim of an assault last night. I underwent surgical procedures on my left hand today. All my fingers and thumb are broken, and my entire hand is in a cast. Could you kindly arrange for someone to drop off a change of clothes for me when I please come home tomorrow? I would like to inquire as to the well-being of my children. Please provide me with a call back. I am experiencing a sense of being a caretaker. I am displeased. Put on your provocative outfit and go home during dinner. My favorite detective arrived at my doorstep. Mr. DeBlas, I have a search warrant for your residence. John, please do not be so formal. Please come in. Would you like something to drink?" "No, thank you." I remained silent as they seized my computers and conducted a comprehensive search. John's assistants exchanged glances, indicating that they had not found anything. "John, what is the current status of the investigation?" "There has been a related assault, and it appears to be a case of sexual retaliation. We have connected this individual to your wife. His genitals were mutilated, and the same message was written on them. On his face in black marker, I wrote, 'I have mutilated this to show that this must be painful, similar to Bonnie's assault.' I had no involvement in this whatsoever. It seems that Karas has caught up with him. I wish you the best of luck with your investigation. Oh, and since you are confiscating my phone, could you please call my dad for me?" John dialed Mark's number. I asked him if I requested a laptop and a low-cost disposable phone. My parents arrived with dinner, and I informed them of the details I had ascertained thus far. My mother's response was not what I had anticipated. Bonnie continued to send messages portraying herself as the victim of a random incident rather than expressing any remorse for her decision to end the marriage. I elected to refrain from responding to her voicemails or texts on Sunday at approximately noon. She was dropped off at our residence by a car, and the children were visibly excited to see her. I made a conscious effort to remain in other areas of the house for the remainder of the day, despite her evident challenges in interacting with the children. I chose to ignore her requests for assistance. Then, I retreated to the bedroom, and I would take care of it. Parker, please do not act in this manner. We are still married, and I will be in this cast for at least 10 weeks. I require your cooperation. I disregarded her and entered my office space with headphones on and music blocking out my surroundings. I was able to accomplish some work. I caught the signal for dinner to be cooked. I sensed a tap on my shoulder. Bonnie passed me a note indicating that the children needed baths. I was unable to risk getting my cast wet. I informed her that I would be in the bedroom when John returned my computers and phone. He informed me that my browser history and cell phone activity were of no use to them. I was gratified to be able to say, "I told you so." Bonnie inquired of JN about the recovery of her rings, which she had been wearing, included my wedding band along with her maternal grandmother's wedding band. It would appear that the attackers removed them before injuring her fingers. John replied that no rings had been found or turned in. We existed in a stalemate, with Bonnie attempting to exert influence and me standing firm until the bedroom door closed. On a daily basis, I was subjected to attempts to influence my determination. However, I remained unwavering in my resolve. On Thursday, Bonnie emerged from the bedroom in a seductive attire while I was on the phone with Edith. She informed me that I had plans for another date, and I was uncertain as to whether I would return that night. I gazed at her in shock, and it became evident that I needed a divorce without delay. I was unwilling to endure the humiliation of being cuckolded. Although I would miss my children, I felt I had reached my breaking point. Edith agreed to take the children to their doctor's appointment on Friday and expressed her dismay regarding Bonnie's actions while offering moral support. I was too overwhelmed to think rationally. Fortunately, the comforting presence of my children offered a glimmer of hope. In the future, I was in a deep sleep when my phone suddenly rang. Upon seeing an unfamiliar number, I allowed it to go to voicemail. Later, upon hearing the notification tone, I listened to the message. It was from a man named Mr. Deblas. He said that his wife, Bonnie, had been admitted to the hospital. He was reaching out as a courtesy. I was confused. What in the world was going on? This is a replication of our initial encounter. I doubted she was with the same person. Injuries like those do not heal so quickly. Perhaps this person had assaulted her. It was disturbing to realize that part of me wished for her demise due to her injuries. I recognize that this is a disturbing thought, but my life is in utter chaos right now. After taking a sip of whiskey and drifting into after consuming a cup of coffee, I was able to set aside my concern for Bonnie. As John approached the front door, I greeted him. "Good to see you again," I said. "What's the latest?" I handed him a copy of the search warrant and the same pattern assault, leaving the motel, broken fingers, and another message on her face. "Another victim with mutilated privates," I noted. "You're elusive, but we are determined to apprehend you. We encourage you to make your best effort, John. I am just as uncertain as you are." The same message was sent to the man, and yes, on Bonnie. There was a second message. "You are a slow learner. We will be next. You mentioned broken fingers, correct? This time, that is indeed the case. She will be incapacitated for quite some time, which is unfortunate for her. Do not expect me to come to her." Prior to the confiscation of my mobile phones, I contacted my father to request the use of his laptop once more. Additionally, I informed him of my need for another disposable phone. Fortunately, all of my work is stored in the cloud, and I had the foresight to create backups of everything and transfer them onto thumb drives. I entrusted them to my father for safekeeping on Friday at approximately 4 p.m. I received a call from an individual identifying themselves as Bonnie, although it was not Bonnie herself who was calling. The caller sounded distressed, expressing concern about how she would manage the situation and complaining about the circumstances. I was not particularly concerned about the situation, as I was focused on other matters. Perhaps her parents would provide her with shelter during dinner. Julie stopped by and assisted with looking after the children. When my phone rang, she noticed it was Bonnie and answered, activating the speakerphone. "Parker, you need to assist me." "To assist me, Bonnie, this is Julie. It is not expected that Parker or any of his acquaintances will aid someone like you. Julie, I have previously advised you to refrain from interfering in my personal affairs. Please put Parker on the line." She offered me the phone, but I declined, so she ended the call on Sunday. Bonnie attempted to contact me again, but I did not answer. I am currently unaware of her whereabouts. John returned my call. On the previous occasion, I was given the same warning that my involvement was still suspected. On Monday morning, I was surprised by an unexpected visitor, Edith. "What brings you here?" "I am here to assist you with the children." "What about Bunny?" "She is staying with you, is she not?" "No, she asked us to mind our own business, so we have stopped answering her calls. We have not seen her since the night she instructed us to stay out of her life. I believe she is staying with one of her friends. It is possible that she is staying with someone from her wedding party. If so, please come in. Would you like some coffee, Black? Where are my children?" Edith stayed out of my way and spent the entire day looking after the children when they were asleep. She took care of the laundry and did some general cleaning. Initially, I thought she would only be staying for one day, but she has returned every day since. On some days, Roger joins her. I managed to catch up on my work projects and even had time for a guilt. I have not received any communication from Bonnie, and Edith has also confirmed that she has not been in touch. My attorney has suggested that it would be an opportune moment to initiate divorce proceedings, given that Bonnie has effectively abandoned the children and stayed for dinner. I am now able to structure my day as if I were still married, as the previously chaotic days have now settled into a tranquil rhythm. However, this newfound calmness allows ample time for me to contemplate my situation with Bonnie and nurture my resentment towards her. The grandparents visit several times a week. They have a much better relationship than Bonnie and I ever did. When the children have a medical appointment, one of the grandparents usually takes them. Once the paperwork was prepared, Bonnie was served. Her voicemails were filled with explicit language and threats. I chose not to delete them, thinking they might offer the court a clearer understanding of Bonnie's behavior. Given my limited mobility and the lawyers' meetings, I felt it was important to present a comprehensive account of her actions. The hearing took place in my front yard, with the intention of introducing an additional element of shame for Bonnie. The opposing counsel was adamant in their pursuit of Bonnie's custody rights and the securing of child support from me. We presented similar claims against Bonnie, asserting that she was required to seek employment in order to contribute to child support, given her skill set. It appeared unlikely that she would be able to fulfill this obligation without resorting to earnings from escort services. The initial court hearing did not favor Bonnie. My lawyer presented me as the sole provider for the children over the past 8 weeks. This was based on the assertion that due to her injuries, Bonnie was unable to use her hands when questioned about why I was not assisting her. My attorney presented depositions from Bonnie's 2 lovers with injured genitalia. I affirmed that I did not approve of Bonnie engaging in extramarital affairs. Bonnie and her legal team huddled for several minutes. Their final move was to present a document containing a cautionary message to Bonnie was presented by my legal counsel. They contended that the note could have been fabricated solely for dramatic effect. Bonnie's legal team lacked evidence regarding the origin of the note. I was not involved in its creation. Further proceedings are now pending. The court requested additional documentation from Bonnie regarding her abandonment of the children. According to my legal counsel, this development is beneficial for our case. The hand cast was removed. Bonnie entered the house and discovered that all of her belongings had been crammed into the laundry room, which infuriated her. My lawyer advised me to allow her back in, as not doing so would create a negative impression. Despite my hope that the children would reject Bonnie, they did not. While holding Connie, she attempted a different approach. "Parker, what do I need to do to move past this? I still love you, and I believe you love me too. I'm sorry for hurting you. I was immature, but I've grown up a lot since then. In the preceding 3 months, Bonnie, you are mistaken. I no longer love you. The sooner I can remove you from my life, the better. I am not leaving you. You will still have to deal with me when you visit your children. I grew increasingly frustrated, prompting me to head to my office. Our upcoming court date was imminent. Bonnie was asleep on the couch, and we continued to avoid each other almost constantly. This was similar to before, when she had only one functional hand. I took care of matters once Bonnie was confined to her room. When our case was called, Bonnie appeared pleased to see her parents in prison, although she hadn't seen them since the argument preceding her first court appearance. She waved at them, but they ignored her. Her demeanor shifted when my attorney summoned Edith to the stand. Edith, may I address you as such? Yes. Is Bonnie your daughter? Yes. Have you disowned her? She was rendered incapable of engaging in rational thought and action due to her promiscuous behavior. Parker was at home, caring for the children she had abandoned. It is imperative that I do not allow my precious angels to grow up with the perception that promiscuity is an acceptable lifestyle choice. Is it true that Parker is currently under house arrest? Yes, but that is because he assaulted someone he believed was harming Bonnie. It turns out that she was engaging in promiscuous behavior that night as well. No further questions, Your Honor. Bonnie's attorney wisely chose not to cross-examine. It would be beneficial to examine the celebratory highs. Following the granting of custody to me and the imposition of child support obligations on Bonnie, a period of 5 years elapsed. It was not deemed necessary to order alimony, given that I was already covering all housing expenses. When my lawyer presented the recorded threatening voicemails, the judge ruled that the initial 3 months of visitation must be supervised. I had anticipated feeling elated as a result of the liberation. However, the reality was a complex blend of melancholy and a hint of relief. The domestic situation remained largely unchanged. Edith paid daily visits, and she and Julie assumed control of my romantic life. I made it clear that I did not prioritize finding a romantic partner, a stance that was challenged on a Saturday morning when Carmen arrived at my doorstep. Edith had invited her over to Carmen sought assistance with the children. Her son, Adam, was only a week older than Adam. Her husband had died in a vehicular accident when she was 5 months pregnant. She was 2 years my senior and employed in customer support for an insurance agency. It was evident to all that this was a premeditated arrangement, yet I did not object while the children slept. Carmen and I conversed at the kitchen table. We proceeded to converse at the table. I recounted the details of my house arrest, and she informed me about her late husband. As I was on the verge of disclosing the information about Bonnie, there was a knock on the front door. Bonnie, it's good to see you. I assume the lady accompanying you is overseeing today's activities. This is Margot Hansen. I greeted Margot with a handshake before checking. Her credentials were presented. Edith bid us farewell as she exited through the rear entrance. I welcomed Margot and Bonnie inside. This is Carmen, I said, gesturing to my friend. She is a dear acquaintance of mine. Her son, Chad, is asleep with Adam. Bonnie's gaze towards Carmen could have caused harm if it were possible. However, Carmen maintained a cheerful expression and greeted Bonnie gently. It is a pleasure to meet you, she said. You, Bonnie, roused the children while I escorted Carmen to the door. Would you like me to bring dinner tonight? After all, we're close friends. Without hesitation, I leaned in for a kiss, which was reciprocated. I would love for you to see you tonight. Bonnie observed closely as I interacted with Carmen. Everyone watched as Carmen waved goodbye. After driving for several hours, I found myself eager for the prospect of a first dinner with a woman in 6 months. Following the feeding and nap time routines for my children, I proceeded to take a brief shower, shave, and apply a minimal amount of aftershave. I selected a suitable outfit, comprising a clean shirt and jeans. I changed into a clean shirt and jeans while Carmen rang the doorbell. She had also changed her clothes. She assisted me with the dishes while the boys were playing. The casserole she brought was large enough to last me for several days. We conversed until nearly midnight, which I found to be a very pleasant surprise. Carmen was not merely a passive listener, she encouraged me to express my thoughts and feelings. To delve into the thoughts and emotions surrounding Bonnie's mistreatment of me, it was necessary to convince her of my innocence regarding the assaults. I am unsure if she truly believes me, but I am certain of the truth. Close to midnight, she hugged drowsy Chad and departed. I requested to meet her again, and she agreed. Our good night was concluded. The kiss was markedly more passionate than the previous one. I had previously assumed that I did not require female companionship, but I spent the entire night tossing and turning. On Sunday, Edith arrived eager to hear about my encounter with Bonnie. However, she quickly shifted the conversation to discuss Carmen. I remained reserved. At this juncture, it is unclear whether any woman would be interested in a young father with 4 children to support. However, I may be mistaken about that. Carmen brings a casserole every Saturday, and there are 2 more months of house arrest. My entertainment options are limited to television or music. When Carmen requested music, she then encouraged me to dance, but I was unable to conceal my arousal. Unfortunately, she was successful in provoking a reaction. Parker, I am not prepared to enter into another relationship, but it is empowering to know that I still have the capacity to captivate you. Can you handle taking things slowly? I believe so. My thoughts are jumbled. I am unsure of what I want. Does that make sense? I am unable to fully comprehend the experiences you have endured, and I am equally certain that you are unable to grasp my own experiences. It will take time for us to gain a mutual understanding. Edith had entrusted me with the responsibility of caring for the children on weekends. On Tuesday, she requested that I take a seat. Parker, I do not wish to exert undue control over your life. However, I do have some influence over certain aspects of it. I recently engaged in a discussion with Carmen's mother. The following evening, I learned that Carmen's vehicle had ceased functioning and that she was unable to allocate funds for repairs, given her obligations related to rent and childcare. She informed me that she had only a few $100s remaining each month. Do you believe that we could assume responsibility for Chad and thereby relieve her of the childcare expenses? I concur that it would be a commendable gesture on our part, but I am uncertain as to the feasibility of doing so. Nevertheless, further assistance is required. What is the extent of the financial assistance required for the car repairs? I feel a sense of obligation towards her for the casserole she has been providing. Thank you, Parker. I will ascertain the details of the car the following morning. Carmen arrived at my residence in the company of another woman, who was seated in the driver's seat and gesturing at me. Carmen's eyes were bright with emotion. Thank you, Parker. This gesture is greatly appreciated. It was not an onerous task. Carmen, see you later today. The cost of repairing Carmen's car was approximately $300. I considered it a worthwhile investment, as seeing Carmen every day was an added bonus. Our greetings and farewells now resembled those exchanged by lovers. The hugs conveyed a great deal of passion. My period of house arrest had concluded, and I seized the chance to go for a 10. I suggested to Carmen that she might arrange to have Friday off, as I was planning a full-day date for us. Edith could look after the children. I proposed this for the weekend, but both Edith and Julie have prior commitments. That would be a wonderful idea, and I will give her a call later today from the office to confirm. I will contact you later today via telephone. Several hours later, our date was scheduled. I was filled with excitement. Friday proceeded without incident. I collected Carmen and Chad early in the morning. After dropping Chad off at my residence, where Edith was caring for him, we proceeded to the marina. The guided tour, which lasted approximately an hour, provided us with some much-needed intimate moments with the amusement park. Now that it is open, we spent the following 5 hours hopping from one queue to another. Eventually, it was time to head back to Parker's residence. I expressed my fatigue at waiting for him to take the initiative. I inquired as to whether he would be willing to stay over that night. He responded affirmatively, suggesting that we stay for the weekend. Once the children were asleep, I reflected on the evening's events. I was uncertain about my next move. I did not want to appear too eager, yet I also did not want to seem disinterested. I made us drinks and then suggested, shall we watch some TV in the bedroom? I sensed that Carmen was wrestling with the same thoughts. We barely laughed for a minute on the bed before getting swept up in a passionate kiss. Our actions felt instinctual. I squeezed her breast through her clothes, and she scratched. Once we both acknowledged our desires, our clothes vanished swiftly, revealing our toned bodies. Given my inconsistent diet, Carmen noticed my thin chest. At that moment, I was not portraying a particularly macho image. I inquired as to whether she was on birth control. I also asked her if she had been tested for any sexually transmitted diseases. I had been tested when everything started, and I had received all of the results. The results were negative, thus I am confident that I am free of any sexually transmitted diseases. I have never been tested, so I ask that you trust my assertion. I am prepared to take the relationship to the next level. I was more than ready on multiple occasions after tending to the chickens on Saturday. It was the best day I had had in a year. We engaged in sexual intercourse while the children were asleep, despite a shortage of car seats. We opted for delivery from an Italian restaurant while we were giving lunch was provided for the children. Carmen's phone rang. It was her mother calling. She answered the call in the living room, away from the bustling kitchen. Upon returning, her complexion was pale. I informed her that her father had suffered a heart attack and was on life support. I requested that she gather Chad's things. I would arrange travel in such a situation. I expressed my condolences, assured her of my support, and shed a tear with her. I believe I was crying as much for her pain as I was for the loss of her presence. She was at the airport in less than 90 minutes. I was uncertain about my position in the relationship. Our relationship was casual and based on a mutual understanding of physical intimacy. However, I was unsure if this was the extent of our connection. A couple of nights and a day of intimacy does not necessarily imply a deeper emotional attachment. Nevertheless, I could not deny that my feelings for Carmen extended beyond mere friendship. Was she experiencing the same sentiments, or was I merely indulging in wishful thinking? It was imperative that we engage in a discourse. Carmen contacted me later in the day, informing me that her flight was on schedule. She provided solace to her mother while her father fought for his life. It was not an opportune time to delve into the nuances of our relationship. Her father survived, albeit in a debilitated state, with brain damage from lack of oxygen rendering him incapable of self-care. Communication with Carmen became less frequent. I left messages for her, and she left messages for me. It seemed that I had received an answer. Edith and Julie noticed my sadness and resumed their matchmaking efforts, free from previous constraints. The few dates I went on were more conventional. I quickly learned to mention my 4 young children up front, as I had anticipated that opportunities for dating were scarce. The closure with Carmen came in the form of in a letter, she informed me that her father had passed away and that she had decided to remain on the East Coast. She expressed gratitude for our time together and bestowed upon me her blessings in finding someone new. I was profoundly affected by this news. I acknowledge that I made the decision to trade in my sedan for an SUV to accommodate 4 car seats and another adult. The grocery store cashiers extended kindness and assistance to me, ensuring I did not purchase any items that would be unsuitable for my family of 4. I remained optimistic that I would find love again, as I believed that otherwise would be too disheartening. 1 year after Carmen's departure, Edith found me alone. "Parker, I received word from Carmen's mother." Edith seemed unsure of my reaction. "How are they hoping she hadn't burned bridges?" I have always held a favorable opinion of Carmen's mother. I was uncertain of her name, but Edith informed me that it was Parker. I responded that I was aware of her identity and that I would welcome her return without hesitation. 3 days later, I experienced a sudden surge of emotion when I discovered Carmen waiting for me at home after work. Adam and Carmen were sharing a room, and so were Adam and I. With the assistance of all the grandparents, we are successfully raising 5 wonderful children. We attempt to manage on Carmen and my incomes alone, but the grandparents tend to spoil the kids with purchases that exceed our budget. Bonnie remarried about a year after the divorce was finalized, although she still visits. She is significantly behind on her child support payments to the children. She is more like a sporadic visitor than a mother figure. They see Nana Edith as their primary maternal figure. Carmen and I opted for a simple courthouse wedding. Neither of us has any desire for more children, 5 is plenty. No charges were ever brought against anyone for the assaults on Bonnie or her partners. No legal action has been taken against any party for the assaults on Bonnie or her partners. However, Bonnie and her parents remain estranged. I continue to regard Edith and Roger as the loving grandparents they are. During the Christmas season, 3.5 years after Bonnie's departure, I found myself alone in the kitchen with Edith. I was curious, so I inquired regarding the 2 rings she wore. She rotated the one on her ring finger and then the other on her pinky. She made this observation with a wink, stating, "This one is my wedding band, and this one belonged to my mother." I was taken aback by her revelation. With a secretive gesture, she placed her index fingers to her lips and whispered, "So that's why." The narrative concludes with the protagonist's intricate emotional odyssey, which is set in motion from the opening lines. I was wholly absorbed as I accompanied him through a tapestry of disappointments, aspirations, and the capricious turns of fate. Parker's experiences prompt introspection on the ways in which we persevere and prevail over adversity in life.